business can be a huge opportunity, but there is also a real risk associated to it. Now, I was asked the other day, what is a way that you can buy a business but build into it a way to de-risk it as much as possible? Now, there is an answer to this, and it's something called an earnout. Now, take the jargon away, but you may have heard of earnout, you may not have, but if we take the jargon away, think of it like this. I don't have kids, but I imagine if I did have kids and they wanted pocket money, imagine structuring it in a way that you say, okay, you get half of your pocket money at the beginning of the week, then you get the other half of the pocket money at the end of the week, only if you clean up your room, do the dishes, be nice and polite to me all the time. You can tell I have kids, I don't know if that's a realistic goal, but you make conditions and they get the other half of the pocket money at the end of the week if they meet those conditions. An earnout is basically the same thing, and it's one of the key tools that you can use to de-risk a deal. And it can work extremely well when you're both buying, but also for the seller. Now, the key to any deal is you only get a deal if the buyer and seller can agree. Now, the ways that an earnout can work really well to de-risk a deal, but also get that agreement between a buyer and seller, so a deal even goes ahead, is the use of an earnout. So you can structure an earnout however you want. And that's a really important lesson for all deals that you do. There are no set rules on how anything has to be done. There are common ways of doing it, sure, but you can just need to think about what you are trying to prioritize, what you're trying to get out of this, and there are ways to structure deals to try and de-risk it for you and try and get that deal done in the way that works for the buyer and the seller. So an earnout, typical way it works is you agree a purchase price, but some of that purchase price is paid up front, but some of it's held back until a future time when certain conditions are met. A really common certain condition is the profitability of the company, the EBITDA. So typically a business is valued based on its EBITDA, and this is where that risk comes into it, because when you're buying, you've got your buyer's hat on, and you can look at a business and you can say, there's so many things, there is risk, that is just part of it, but you can say, okay, well, what if that revenue growth doesn't happen? Or what if we did lose a key customer, their key staff, what if they did leave? And really at the end of the day, what you're concerned about with all of those things is the impact they're going to have on the profit of the business. So bringing in an earnout can really help where you have enough concern around certain aspects of the business that is making you quite cautious, but you're still keen to get a deal done, but you want to de-risk it somewhat. So you could, in a situation like that, say, well, I'll pay 75% of the price up front, but I'm holding back 25% of the price, and I'll pay it in 2 years' time based on the business actually earning that profitability. And you can make those conditions whatever you want. It can be 2 years, it could be 1 year, it could be 6 months, it could just be based on profit, it could be based on other things. It all comes down to the business that you're looking at, the risks that you see, the opportunities that you see, and the deal that you can agree between the buyer and seller. Another condition that I've used a lot with earnouts is I always use the profit as one of them, because that helps cover a whole lot of aspects could go wrong that impact the profit. But the other one is the owner helping or being involved. A lot of the times when you buy a business, the owner of that business was quite heavily involved, whether it was proactively day to day, or there's a lot of history, or they drive the strategy, whatever it is, it's very common. So often when you buy a business, you want to have it conditional on that owner continuing to support you and being involved in some kind of way, and you would agree the kind of terms of that and the way that you'd still like their support. But continuing to be involved to allow you time to learn the business, to transition it, and to pick up. So that's another common one that we would put in the earnout. So it could be conditional on both the profit hitting a pre-agreed number and the owner staying on board and helping you for X period. And that's a very common one, and I've seen it work really, really well. They work quite nicely in combination because you can often have a deal where the buyer needs to stay, and maybe a condition that the buyer stays involved for a period and helps you transition and learn. But when you also tie that to profit, it's quite good because it's incentivizing the previous owner to proactively help you and support you in a positive way, because they're only going to get the rest of their purchase price if the profit meets that agreed target. So the second to last deal I did, and the one before that, both of them had an earnout, both of them had a profit target, and one had it based on the owner staying involved in the business for 2 years, and one of them, it was the owner staying involved in the business for 1 year. And once those conditions were met, then the rest of the purchase price got paid. And this is also very good for the seller. It can also work very well if you are selling a business that you truly believe is a really good business. And that is the whole point behind building a business, is you want to try and build it in a way that it is a really strong foundation for that next person to take on and buy and grow. So if you truly do believe in those growth opportunities, and you truly believe that you've set it up for success, and say you have agreed to stay on and help that transition process, then an earnout can be a really good way to get the buyer comfortable enough to go ahead with that purchase. And it can be a good way to get a better price. So as an example, say you wanted $1.2 million for your business, but the buyer can only get comfortable with $1 million. There's just a bit too much risk, a bit too much uncertainty. They're not as confident. They don't know the business like you do, so they're not as confident. So they're a bit more pessimistic, a bit more conservative. So you want 1.2 million. They can only get themselves to 1 million. So your options are do a deal for 1 million. They're not going to go to 1.2. So it's do a deal for 1 million today. Or you could do an earnout and they buy it for, they pay 800,000 today, but they will pay that extra 400,000 to take it up to your price of 1.2 million in a year's time if it does reach these profit levels and you do continue to support it in these ways. Whatever conditions that you agree on is reasonable for both parties. And if they do meet those, then they pay the extra price and you get the 1.2 million. And it can work really well because in this scenario, if you truly believe as a seller that that's a really good business, then you're quite happy to take that risk because you do believe it's possible and you do think these goals are achievable. And then it gives you the opportunity to actually earn 1.2 million as opposed to 1 million. Obviously there is some risk there. If it doesn't get achieved, then you're only going to get 800k. So that you're taking on some risk, but you've potentially got this extra reward. And then as the buyer, they might be prepared to pay 1 million. They don't want to go to 1.2, but actually this gives them the opportunity to say, okay, well actually I'm only putting at risk 800,000. So I'm actually better off and I'm coming from a reduced risk point. If then all these positive things do happen and the business does go exceptionally well, then I'll pay the extra. But I'm only paying the extra because this business did end up doing really, really well. And then you then own that business and it's your asset. And you've got the benefit of that improved financial position that you can then continue to grow and get improved value from in the future. So that is what we call an earnout, technical jargon that you don't really use anywhere else, that word. But just think of it as an incentive. So you give your kids $5 pocket money, I'm probably cheap, shows my age, and you'll only give them that extra $5 if they make their bed every day, help with the dishes, etc. So it's just really an incentive, and it's a way to try and create that win-win situation for a buyer and a seller. That means a deal gets done where otherwise it may not have. And to answer that question that I had from the buyer's perspective, it helps de-risk that deal because their purchase price is less and they're only paying more if this actually happens. So instead of it just being a dream, and therefore that risk associated, they're only paying that extra money if it actually happens. So I hope that makes sense. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the channel as I do weekly videos. If you have any questions, please comment below and I will get back to you on those. Thank you.